On today's episode, the Chicago Blackhawks have shut down forward Cole Guttman for the rest of the season. I'll get into all the latest updates on Guttman's injury, and I'll also talk about prospect Ryder Rolston signing his entry-level contract. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Today is Tuesday, March 14th. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you can also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And real quick, if you're listening to the audio version of today's episode and you like what you're hearing, do me a favor, please go and show some support. First, by following the podcast. You can also go and leave me a review if you want to as well, which, spoiler alert, as I'll be talking about after the first commercial break, you're going to have to do that in order to have a chance to win the 2 free Blackhawks tickets that I'm giving away on the 28th against the Dallas Stars. So make sure to go and do that. Also, if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do me a huge favor. It helps me out tremendously. Go and hit that subscribe button. Check out all the video versions of the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. And while you're there, smash the like button down below. Comment as to where you think the Blackhawks will finish in the NHL standings when it's all said and done. And last, go and ring the bell. Turn on those push notifications. And that way you can get notified when the episode gets uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all again, as always, for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your day. The Chicago Blackhawks tonight are back in action, taking on the Boston Bruins at the United Center. However, with this being arguably the most lopsided matchup of the entire season, we're not really going to be talking about it too much here on today's show because, quite frankly, I think it's fairly obvious the Blackhawks should lose this game. I mean, with how they've been playing recently against Ottawa, Detroit, Florida, and Tampa Bay, hey, maybe they put together another solid performance and hang around for longer than anyone really expects. But I just don't see there being a way where this team comes out on top of the 50-10-5 Boston Bruins. This should be a nice little tank loss for the Blackhawks tonight. And as I mentioned on the show yesterday, the Columbus Blue Jackets and the San Jose Sharks, the only 2 teams lower than the Blackhawks at this point in the standings, they're going head-to-head tonight for a big matchup, I believe, out on the West Coast in San Jose. One of those 2 teams has to emerge victorious. Cross our fingers. Maybe we'll get some overtime. But with a loss tonight from the Blackhawks plus a win from one of those 2 teams, that'll certainly help the Blackhawks tank stocks moving forward as we get to the close of the regular season. So with that being the case in the matchup tonight against Boston, what we're going to open up the show with today, folks, was the tough news that dropped yesterday regarding 23-year-old forward Cole Guttman, as he will need season-ending shoulder surgery. It's kind of a tough one to say. Season-ending shoulder surgery after getting hurt in the game recently against the San Jose Sharks. Apparently, the Blackhawks and Guttman were aware of this injury situation and actually decided to play him for as long as possible, which I don't really know if that's the right idea. I don't really know if you want to be toying around with one of your few intriguing forward prospects. Yes, sure, Kyle Davidson did a good job of addressing the positional need in the organization in the 2022 NHL draft, but a lot of those kids are still, 2-3 years away at this point, maybe even longer. Cole Guttman is one of the few forward prospects already in the system who's shown some NHL promise. I don't really know if the Blackhawks should have been playing him after knowing he was already hurt. But that's what they decided to do. They were aware of the situation, and then they finally had to shut Guttman down after the game on Saturday against the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's kind of where we're at right now, but it does make a lot of sense. I will say we finally have gotten a little more explanation as to the reasoning why Guttman wasn't sent down to Rockford as part of a paper transaction during the NHL trade deadline that would have made him eligible for the AHL playoffs. You would think that the Blackhawks would want Guttman to be part of that experience, to be part of that club, working together and playing meaningful hockey. While it is at the AHL level, it's still playoff hockey nonetheless, in, arguably the second, if not the third best professional league in the entire world. You would think that Guttman, the Blackhawks would want Guttman to be getting that experience. And I talked about, when that first happened, when the announcement came that Guttman wasn't part of the paper transactions, I thought, well, maybe he's just kind of solidified himself as an NHLer at this point, and maybe the Blackhawks think he doesn't have anything left to prove really at the AHL level. And while that still may be true, it certainly does make more sense as to why he wouldn't have been eligible to perform for Rockford in the Calder Cup playoffs. It's because the Blackhawks knew he wasn't going to be healthy enough to do so. So a tough break for Cole Guttman. Someone who I think we all know, if you've been still watching the Blackhawks at this point of the season, power to you. Cole Guttman was, one of the bright spots and the shining stars for this team over the past 2 weeks. A really successful first NHL stint. He finished with 4 goals and 2 assists for 6 points in his first 14 NHL games. Finishes also on a 3-game point streak, had 2 goals in his last 3 games, then added an assist on Taylor Raddysh's goal against Tampa Bay most recently. But yeah, I was really impressed with what I saw out of Cole Guttman in those 14 games. I think he's got a really good skating ability, a solid offensive game. I really like his tenacity, a really nice goal against the Florida Panthers, although it did get the Blackhawks a point. A good effort from him in tight and around the net, going to the dirty areas to clean up and get the game-winning goal. A lot of hustle, a lot of energy, a lot of intensity, a lot of good things out of Cole Guttman. I honestly, the way he plays the game, I wouldn't think he's, 5'9", $170, $175. Hopefully, he'll be able to throw on a little bit more weight and round out his game a little bit. He's going to be 24 this April, I believe. So he is a little bit further along in the process. He played all 4 years of college hockey with Denver. I'm sure the Blackhawks got a good look at him there, considering the prospects that they've had in that pipeline over the past few seasons. But yeah, he is a little bit further along in the process. So, there's always the capability to get stronger. And it doesn't sound like this is an injury that the Blackhawks or Guttman, while it obviously isn't ideal, it doesn't sound like, at least at this point, it's an injury that's really going to hinder him moving forward. And hopefully he'll be fully healthy and ready to go when training camp rolls around next fall, because he's certainly a kid that you would expect to be making the roster out of camp if all goes well, and kind of looking forward as to where we could see Guttman. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a top 6 guy, only getting 14 games of action. It's kind of hard to dictate exactly what role he's going to have in his future. Considering that the Blackhawks, I don't think they're going to be too active on the free agent market. Now, they do have to go and bring in some players in order just to reach the salary cap floor, but I feel like there's a chance that Guttman could find himself in a second-line center role during training camp next fall, or maybe it's down on the third line. Maybe that's a better spot for him. Whatever it is, I do think he's going to get an opportunity to be a roster player right out of training camp. And I'm really excited to see what this kid has in store moving forward. A tough situation to hear, obviously that Guttman's not going to be able to play in these final 16 games, but I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot more about this kid in Chicago when he gets back on the ice for the Blackhawks next season. All right, there are my thoughts on Cole Guttman getting shut down for the rest of the season due to shoulder surgery. Coming up in just a minute, I will talk about the Hawks signing forward prospect Ryder Rolston to his entry-level contract. But first, I need to talk to you all about FanDuel. The second half of the NBA season is here. We're getting down the stretch, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. Because if you're a new customer, you can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. You just got to download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, which is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And for all you Bulls fans out there, you got to check out FanDuel. You can bet on everything from the Bulls' money line to point scorers to three-pointers hit by either DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, or Ayo Dosunmu. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a greater payout with the same game parlay feature. So don't miss out on your chance to get the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets back if your bet doesn't hit when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Real quick, before I dive on in to segment 2, I do want to remind you all that I'm giving away 2 free Blackhawks tickets to the game on March 28th against the Dallas Stars. And all you have to do in order to qualify, first, you have to leave me a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Bonus points to those of you who hooked the boy up with a 5-star review. And you're also going to want to be sure to drop the name of your YouTube channel in there, because the second thing you need to do is you have to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. And by dropping your YouTube channel name in that review, that's how I'm checking. And you have to do both in order to qualify for those 2 free tickets. So make sure to do all of that good stuff to get a chance to win 2 free tickets to the Blackhawks game on the 28th against the Dallas Stars. All right, getting back into the show, segment 2, let's talk about some of the good news that came out yesterday, which was the announcement that forward prospect Ryder Rolston has signed a 3-year entry-level contract with the club and is going to report down to the Rockford Ice Hogs. And as I mentioned on the show yesterday, the Ice Hogs certainly could use some help and some healthy bodies down there right now. They're not in a premier position to be making their charge towards the Calder Cup playoffs. With the Blackhawks being hurt, a lot of Ice Hogs players have had to be up in the NHL. The Ice Hogs are also dealing with some injury problems of their own. The goalie situation has been a carousel for the greater portion of the year, except for the last month. It's been a really tough year altogether for the Rockford Ice Hogs, which is kind of unfortunate because when healthy, I really do feel like they have the talent to be one of the best teams in the entire league. But hopefully Ryder Rolston will go down there and offer some much needed help if he is healthy, which I'll get into here in just a second. But for those of you who may be a little unfamiliar with Ryder Rolston still at this point, I'm pretty excited to see what this kid has to offer. He was a 5th-round pick of the Colorado Avalanche back in the 2020 NHL draft and then got acquired by the Blackhawks later on in 2021, when they dished Carl Soderberg. You all remember him, right? They sent Carl Soderberg to the Colorado Avalanche, and part of that return was prospect Ryder Rolston, who, by the way, some of you may be saying Rolston, that name sounds familiar. Yes, his father, Brian, had a very long and successful Stanley Cup career, was a Stanley Cup champion. This is his son, Ryder. He's spent the last 3 seasons playing for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, most recently tallying 20 points, 7 goals, and 13 assists in 27 games this season before he suffered a broken collarbone, which ultimately put his campaign to a close. So the question remains kind of whether or not Ryder Rolston is going to be healthy enough to join Rockford before the end of the year, because, as I just referenced, that was a broken collarbone that he suffered, occurred about 6 or 7 weeks ago now. So, he could be on the verge of a return. And at the same time, I really don't know if the Blackhawks would have signed him to an ELC had he not been fully healthy. Maybe they did just want to get it done and over with. But I figure if they're giving him an ELC this late in the year, it's probably for him to play in some games. So we'll kind of see about Rolston's health situation. I'm sure we'll have a little bit more clarity on that over the next few days. But this is a kid that I always have been intrigued by as a late round pick. Obviously, his offensive game doesn't really jump off the scene and doesn't really just nab your attention. He's kind of been a middle 6 player for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish over the last 2 years, but did get off to a really hot start earlier on this season. And I think his best asset, and the one that will probably help him translate to the next level really well, is the strong shot of his, not only seeing it at Notre Dame, but seeing it in person at Blackhawks development camp this past year. That's a really, really big reason why Ryder Rolston is going to be joining the professional level. I think the shot is what kind of makes him intriguing moving forward. I don't think he's ever going to be a great point getter or an assist man, a guy who's always setting up his teammates. I don't think that's going to be the case with him very frequently. Now, maybe he can develop that game a little bit more than we've seen so far in his career. But I do think the goal scoring, the shot, shooting the puck, that's going to be the forte for Ryder Rolston at the professional level. But he does add some good size, 6'1", 175 pounds. good energy, good forecheck. That's kind of the other part that a lot of folks have talked about with Rolston is what he does away from the puck, very competitive nature. So we'll see how he fares if he does end up getting any action with the Rockford IceHogs before the end of the year. But with Rolston signing his ELC, it's a good reminder, Blackhawks fans, that now's that time of the year where we start seeing college free agents getting signed and also players and prospects signing entry-level contracts after their respective seasons have come to a close. We just saw it with Rolston. I wouldn't be shocked if we see it with his Notre Dame Fighting Irish teammate Landon Slager, even though kind of had a down year with Notre Dame. Rumor has it the Blackhawks aren't really concerned about that, and I think the plan is still to move forward with Slager inking his ELC after his junior season, similar as Rolston. Another situation like that I think we could see is defenseman prospect Wyatt Kaiser, who a lot of folks have been intrigued by over the last couple of years, has really played well for the University of Minnesota Duluth. Would not be surprised whatsoever if Kaiser decides to make the jump to professional hockey after his third season with the Bulldogs. He's really been playing a top four role there for each of the last 3 seasons, picked up his play as the year progressed, really finished on a strong note. So I think Wyatt Kaiser could be someone joining the Blackhawks or the Rockford IceHogs here soon as well. Maybe we see someone like Jake Wise, a fifth-year senior for the Ohio State Buckeyes, really had a tough go of it through his first 3 collegiate seasons, has finally gotten back to being healthy and consistently playing games. Been a good point producer for the Buckeyes the last few years. Jake Wise is someone maybe not to forget about. I don't want to just roll this out there because I'm going to guess it's probably not true, but could we see Drew Commesso decide to make the jump to professional hockey after his year closes with Boston University? I know that goalie prospects always take longer, and a 4th year with the Terriers probably wouldn't be the worst thing for Commesso, but he's also been the starter there for 3 years, has a lot of good experience both there and internationally under his belt. Who knows? Maybe we could see Drew Commesso decide to call it quits on his collegiate career. Just wanted to bring that up, considering Rolston is the first of a couple Hawks prospects that we could see getting ELCs done before the end of the year. All right, there is the latest on Ryder Rolston signing with the Blackhawks. Coming up in just a moment, I will discuss my feelings on Jonathan Toews' health situation. But first, real quick, I need to talk to you all about Built Bar, which is the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all of the fat and calories? Well, then you got to try Built. And you may be asking, well, what makes Built Bar so special? Why are they so good? Well, first off, they're covered in 100% real chocolate and come in unbelievable flavors such as cinnamon churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and many, many more. Plus, they only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein in each bar. And right now, you can go down and get Built Bars from your local Walmart or Sam's Club. You used to have to order them online and have to wait for that delivery, but now you can run on down to Walmart or Sam's Club and get you a 4-pack of cookies and cream, cinnamon churro, double chocolate, coconut puffs. Try the Built Bar puffs as well. They're unbelievable. Get a 4-pack. You can thank me later. Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. All right, before I wrap up the show for today, folks, I did want to talk for a second here about Jonathan Toews, who, of course, has not played since before the NHL All-Star break. His last game was January 28th due to chronic immune response syndrome, post-COVID syndrome, just kind of an umbrella term, as they call it. Doctors still aren't exactly sure what's wrong with Toews. He just isn't really regenerating and being as healthy as he should be. But we finally got a little bit more not real update. I mean, kind of the Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews trade deadline stories, the update from Luke Richardson yesterday when he talked with the media. And while Jonathan Toews is in the gym right now, he's still apparently in the first steps of his gym workouts and obviously hasn't progressed to getting back on the ice at this point. And Richardson said there's still no timeline on a potential return for Toews. And just with 16 games left in the season, folks, I mean, we're down to the last game occurs on April 13th. Believe it or not, we're under a month left in the regular season here. And it just feels like well, I don't want to say it would be pointless because it most certainly would not be. It would be very pivotal for Jonathan Toews to get back on the ice in general. And I'm sure that being the competitor that he is and the fire that constantly burns inside of him, I'm sure he's wanting to get back on the ice as well. It's just that given that he hasn't shown any real progress now for basically the last 2 months, I just don't see it, honestly. And I'd love for Jonathan Toews to, have another moment or two at the UC or in a Blackhawks sweater. I think that would be fantastic and the perfect way, if this is the end for him with the Chicago Blackhawks, as we all kind of think that it's going to be. It would be awesome to send him off on a high note, to see him play a couple more times. And I'm sure, like I said, that he's doing everything that he thinks is in his power in order for that to happen. But it just feels like the smartest thing for him would be to give him as much time as possible. There's no need to rush him back. It's not like the Blackhawks are playing meaningful hockey or anything even remotely close to that. It just doesn't feel like there'd be a reason to rush Jonathan Toews back when you could give him the entire offseason, regardless of what he wants to do, whether he stays in Chicago or whether he hits the free agent market. That way, he can be as prepared and as 100% ready as he can be in order to go and rejoin that team and give them everything that he has. And that's the reason why he said he didn't want to be traded. He felt like it would be an unfair situation. And I know a lot of people have talked about Toews retiring. Maybe his body forces him into that, but mentally, I don't think, if his body even gives him a chance to come back, I don't think there's any way that Jonathan Toews retires. Just the person that he is. He was playing well this year for large stretches of it, a lot better than he was for the greater portion of last season. I think he enjoyed proving everyone wrong. He was still the best faceoff man in the league, still can do a lot of things to help a team out if you have him in the right situation. I'm sure he's dying to continue to prove that to everyone. So I think just sitting him for the rest of the year and giving him as much time to come back for next season, whatever team it may be to, is the right way to go about it. Would I love to see him close out his Blackhawks tenure the right way and get 4 or 5 games? Yes, but it just feels, not likely at this point, given the lack of progression that he's had over the last 2 months now, basically. I hate to say it, folks, but I just get that weird feeling that Jonathan Toews has probably already played his last game in the Blackhawks sweater. It just doesn't feel like it would be smart or the right call to rush him back unless he suddenly progresses and is 100%. I just think the chances of that at this point are very slim. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up Tuesday, March 14th episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure, if you haven't already, to go and follow the show for free wherever you get your podcast, and go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. Once again, thank you all for tuning into the show. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, that's going to do it here for the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.